The Ice Princess and Her Two Flames. Episode 1. Fire Meets Ice. The blade whistled through the air, aimed straight for Princess Aeris' heart. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't even blink as the assassin's dagger caught the firelight, reflecting death in its steel edge. Around her, the winter banquet erupted into chaos. Nobles screaming, goblets crashing to marble floors, chairs overturning as panic spread like wildfire through the great hall. But Aeris remained perfectly still, her icy blue eyes fixed on the masked figure lunging toward her with murderous intent. The clash of steel rang out like thunder. A stranger's sword intercepted the assassin's blade mere inches from her throat. Sparks flew as the weapons met, and suddenly a man with dark hair and fierce green eyes stood between her and death, his movements fluid as water, deadly as lightning. "Not tonight," he growled, driving the assassin back with a series of precise strikes. The great hall of Veralia Palace, moments before filled with laughter and the clink of crystal, now echoed with the ring of battle. Guests fled toward the exits, their fine silks and velvets rustling like autumn leaves in a storm. But Aeris sat motionless on her throne-like chair, watching the fight unfold as if it were merely another course in the evening's entertainment. The assassin snarled behind his black mask, pressing his attack. He was skilled, too skilled to be some common cutthroat. His blade work spoke of training, of purpose, of someone who had been set specifically for her. The stranger parried another strike, his sword singing through the air. "Your Highness," he called over his shoulder, not taking his eyes off his opponent. "Perhaps you might consider moving to safety." Aeris tilted her head slightly, the only sign she'd heard him. Her silver-white hair caught the firelight like spun moonbeams, and her pale lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile. "I'm perfectly comfortable where I am." Her voice was silk wrapped around winter, beautiful and absolutely cold. The stranger's jaw tightened in what might have been frustration or admiration. He drove forward with renewed intensity, his blade dancing in complex patterns that forced the assassin to give ground. But even as he fought, more masked figures emerged from the shadows between towering columns, their weapons glinting in the light of 100 candles. "Well," drawled a new voice, rich with authority and barely contained power, "this is certainly more entertaining than I expected." Prince Chiron of Dravorn stepped through the main doors as if he owned them, his amber eyes taking in the chaos with calculating assessment. His crimson and gold traveling clothes were immaculate despite his hard ride, and his hand rested casually on the pommel of his sword. Behind him marched a contingent of his personal guard, their armor gleaming like captured flame. "Chiron," Aeris acknowledged with the same tone she might use to comment on the weather. He sketched an elegant bow that somehow managed to seem both respectful and mocking. "Princess, I see you're hosting quite the party." His gaze flicked to the stranger still battling the assassin. "Though I notice your security seems lacking." "On the contrary," she replied, her eyes never leaving the fight. "It appears to be perfectly adequate." The stranger landed a decisive blow, sending the assassin crashing into a marble pillar. The masked figure crumpled to the floor and lay still. But even as he fell, his companions closed in from three sides, surrounding the green-eyed warrior. Chiron sighed dramatically and drew his sword. Flames licked along the blade's edge as his magic responded to his rising blood. "I suppose I'll have to handle this myself." He moved with predatory grace, fire magic crackling around him as he engaged two of the remaining assassins. The stranger shot him a look that could have frozen hell. "I had the situation well in hand." "Did you?" Chiron's blade swept in a burning arc, forcing one attacker back. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you could use the help." "I don't recall asking for it." "Gentlemen," Aeris' voice cut through their banter like a blade through silk. "Perhaps you could settle your dispute after you finish killing people in my throne room?" Both men paused for the briefest moment, struck by her casual dismissal of the deadly situation. Then they threw themselves back into battle with renewed vigor, each trying to outdo the other. The stranger's movements were fluid and precise, like water finding its path. Chiron fought with controlled fury, his fire magic turning his blade into a weapon of burning light. Within minutes, the remaining assassins lay motionless on the blood-stained marble. Silence fell over the great hall like a shroud. The few nobles brave enough to remain pressed against the walls, their faces pale with shock. Servants crept from behind overturned tables, their eyes wide with terror. And through it all, Princess Aeris sat unmoved, as if watching men die for her was no more remarkable than watching snowfall. The stranger cleaned his blade with methodical precision before sheathing it. His green eyes found hers, and for a moment something passed between them, curiosity perhaps, or challenge. "Are you injured, Your Highness?" No. Her tone suggested the question itself was foolish. Chiron approached her chair with the fluid confidence of a man accustomed to deference. His sword still flickered with dying flames as he slid it home. "Princess Aeris, my father sends his regards, along with his proposal of alliance between our kingdoms." "How thoughtful." She stood with liquid grace, her moonlight blue gown settling around her like mist, and conveniently timed. The stranger stepped forward, and now both men flanked her chair like guardian wolves. "Prince Aaron of Silvaris," he said with a slight bow. "I bring word from the northern territories about suspicious movements along your borders. It seems my timing was fortunate." "Indeed." Her icy gaze moved between them. Two princes arrive within hours of each other, just as assassins decide to interrupt my evening. How interesting. Chiron's amber eyes narrowed. "Surely you don't suspect." "I suspect everyone," she said simply. "It's kept me alive this long." Before either man could respond, a commotion erupted from the corridor beyond the Great Hall. Shouts echoed through the stone passages, followed by the clash of steel and the acrid smell of smoke. "Your Highness!" Commander Thane burst through the doors, his usually immaculate uniform torn and bloodied. "The palace is under attack. Multiple breaches on the east and west wings. They're not just after you. They want the entire royal line dead." Aeris's expression didn't change. Something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, but calculation. "My father?" "Fighting in the throne room. He ordered me to get you to safety." Thane's weathered face was grim. "The passages to the harbor are still clear, but not for long." "I'm not leaving my father." "You are," Chiron said firmly, "because staying means you'll die, and your death serves no one." Aaron nodded agreement, the first time the two princes had agreed on anything. "The commander is right. This is coordinated, planned. Someone wanted you trapped in this room tonight." The sound of fighting grew closer, accompanied by the orange glow of flames beginning to lick at the door frames. Smoke drifted through the air like ghostly fingers. "Princess," Thane said urgently, "your father's final command was clear. You're to go to Varentis, to King Marcus. Trust no one else until you're safely behind his walls." He pressed a sealed letter into her hands. "This will explain everything." Aeris looked at the letter, then at the two princes watching her with intensity that made the air practically vibrate. Finally, she tucked the letter into her bodice and lifted her chin with regal defiance. "Very well, but I choose my own guards." "You don't have a choice," Aaron said quietly. "We're the only ones here." "Exactly my point." Her smile was sharp as winter wind. "Two strangers who arrive at the perfect moment to play hero. How very convenient." Chiron stepped closer, his presence radiating heat. "Think what you like, princess, but we're leaving. Now." The great doors exploded inward as a group of armed men in black surged into the hall. Commander Thane drew his sword with a ring of steel. "Go," he shouted. "I'll hold them here." Aaron grabbed Aeris's arm, the first person to touch her in months, and she felt his earth magic pulse through the contact, steady and warm. "This way. There's a passage behind the tapestries." Chiron fell in on her other side, his fire magic creating a protective barrier of heat and light. "Stay close to us." "I don't have a choice, do I?" But her tone held something that might have been amusement. They ran through twisting corridors as the palace burned around them, smoke stinging their eyes and flames casting dancing shadows on ancient stone walls. Behind them, they could hear Commander Thane's battle cry and the clash of steel as he bought them precious time with his life. When they finally burst through a side door into the cold night air, Aeris turned back once to look at her home. The palace of Veralia burned like a funeral pyre against the star-swept sky, and somewhere in those flames, her father fought for his kingdom. For just a moment, so brief it might have been imagination, her icy composure cracked, and something raw and vulnerable flickered across her face. Both princes saw it, and both felt the sudden, inexplicable urge to shield her from more than just assassins' blades. Then the mask was back in place, perfect and impenetrable. "Well, gentlemen," she said, gathering her skirts and walking toward their waiting horses. "It seems we're about to become very well acquainted." Aaron and Chiron exchanged a look over her head, part challenge, part mutual recognition. They both knew that protecting her meant more than just keeping her alive. It meant breaking through walls of ice that might shatter them all. As they rode into the night with the palace burning behind them, none of them could have guessed that the greatest danger wouldn't come from the assassins hunting them, but from the hearts beginning to beat beneath armor of duty and masks of frost. The cold princess was about to discover that some fires burn hot enough to melt even the deepest winter.